This is the Last Minute Blues Podcast with Alex Ferrario, Donny Fandango, and Jeremy Rutherford on 101 ESPN.
The Last Minute Blues Podcast is presented by Blue Note Roofing. Roofing, siding, and gutters. Your St. Louis roofing experts. Visit BlueNoteRoofingSTL.com for free inspection.
Welcome to a special edition of the Last Minute Blues Podcast presented by Blue Note Roofing, roofing, siding, and gutters. Your St. Louis roofing experts. Visit BlueNoteRoofingSTL.com for a free inspection. Donny Fandango in the Jeff Burton Studios, joined by my Last Minute Blues Podcast cohorts, Alex Ferrario from 101 ESPN, Jeremy Rutherford from The Athletic, and we are joined today by, without question, the most decorated hockey person that we have ever had on the Last Minute Blues Podcast. He is the Blues general manager for a couple more months. Also will be transitioning into the president of hockey operations role. Doug Armstrong joining us for the podcast. Thank you so much, Doug. We really appreciate having you here.
Well, thanks for having me on.
So I doing a little homework here last night, and your career, which, by the way, still going, is insane. Win the Stanley Cup in 1999 with the Stars as the assistant GM. Win with the Blues in 2019. With Hockey Canada, winning a gold in 2010, 2014. Winning World Championship gold in 07, 16, and 23. You're the first member of management to be in the double, triple gold club, winning Stanley Cup more than once, gold medal more than once in the Olympics, and the World Championships. Do you ever sit back and just appreciate all of these amazing things that you have been a part of in your career, again, as it continues to go on?
Yeah, I do. And it's not looking back on it was the people I had an opportunity to work with, not only the players, but the coaches, the managers, the learning that I got to do. And yeah, there's nothing beats winning. I was on the other side of that this year in Italy, getting a silver medal and being part of that staff. But yeah, I enjoy the winning part more than I do the learning experience that you get from losing.
Yeah, and I mean, I hadn't even mentioned, three silvers as well, which I understand not as great as the gold.
Not a good thing to bring up, Donnie.
But still, I mean, it's just looking at this resume, Doug, it's just so incredibly impressive, and I would hope that you would at least have the ability from time to time to go, wow, that was pretty amazing. Yeah,
the international portion, it's great, but it's a 2-week window. It's a small window. There's a lot of work that goes into it, the scouting and all that. But I have more, my fondest memories are coming from my NHL working, because that's a 6-month grind. That's getting with people on September 1st and hoping that you're with them until like June 15th.
Right.
And you go through a lot of emotions with that group. There's not a lot of emotion in international events because they're so quick. But I look back at my time in Dallas as an assistant manager learning, and then my years there managing, and then coming here. My best experiences are ones with the NHL teams, bar none.
Doug, before you were hired, I remember talking to JD, and I think there were a couple names in the mix. He had mentioned Dave Nonis at one point, and then he said, hey, we're going to have something later. We're going to announce we're hiring Doug Armstrong. And of course, I knew of you in Dallas. Is there any stories? I don't think I've ever asked you this. Why St. Louis? Why did you pick here? And did you ever think you'd be here 18 years later? Because I'm going to add the 2 years when you were the general manager and waiting there.
Yeah. Well, why St. Louis was when I got let go in Dallas, I did have some opportunities to talk to other teams, but I had a very young family. When I got here, my son was starting 9th grade, my daughter 7th grade, and I remember saying to my wife, like, we got to pick a city that is going to be good for the kids. And Paul Cavallini and Bobby Bass and I worked with in Dallas. They raved about the Blues community, the city, the alumni. And I remember saying this to my wife, like, we just got to find a place we can get through 6 years. I got to get my daughter through high school. That was our goal, is to get somewhere. And then,
and then you tripled it.
Yeah. And I've been very fortunate, like, to be in the NHL. 1990-91 was my first year in the hockey operations in Minnesota. To be with 2 organizations all the way through, it's a great longevity. I've been very fortunate to work with owners that that were patient when I was making mistakes and learning and working with so many good people around. But there was some other opportunities that probably weren't great for my family that I didn't really want to explore at that time. But when the St. Louis one came up, it was a great place to live. The alumni told me that. And they had been through a transition where they had acquired a bunch of young players. So you could see the horizon, on the horizon, that if I did my job well and surrounded myself with good people, we could have success. And we were fortunate to take those 2 years when I was a player personnel director, assess our group. I think what turned it for us, quite honestly, was the day that Ken Hitchcock walked through the door. That to me, assessing our group at that point, we needed a strong leader because our players, they were old enough to take the next step, and we needed a leader that could push us there. And Ken came in and he pushes and pokes and prods, and it's not always enjoyable. But the players look back on it and thinking those were some of the best times of their lives. And that's what we talk about. I'd rather stick with players through the thick and thin because you enjoy it more when you have success. And it's not, obviously you want to win the cup. Nothing will beat that. But there's a lot of great friendships that are made along the way for teams that didn't win. And learning experiences like the respect I have for David Backus. When I got here, I was just getting settled in, and he signed an offer sheet with Vancouver. And it was like turmoil and crisis, and I understood it, and I didn't have any ill will to him. It was just a situation. He took advantage of the CBA, and then he came back in, and then lo and behold, we make him captain. Because that's who he was. And but I learned a lot from him, his preparation. The one thing that Alex and I talk about when there's, I look at Jake Neighbors for an example, and I said that should be someone that Jake should emulate, is David Backus, because as his career started to grow and he got better, he didn't change. He didn't think that because he got a letter, he had to do something that he didn't want to do. David Backus played in straight lines and with ill will. And that's going to be Jake Neighbors' success. Once you start to go east-west and get out of, what made you who you are, it's difficult. So David Backus is a great guy. Alex Petriano is a great guy. Jay Bomeister. I was fortunate enough to work with some guys. Scotty Upshaw was a guy that we brought in on a pro tryout, and he spent a lot of years here. And there's so many different people that I have so much respect for that I could name the best players, but it's also the Scotty Gomez came in. You get to touch so many different people and understand, and they make you better, and you pick up something from everybody that hopefully you apply as you move forward.
Doug, I am curious just what these last 5 years have been like for you, because if I'm remembering this correctly, I mean, Dallas, it was kind of that winning mindset, that winning era when you were taking over as the general manager there. And when you got to St. Louis, the rebuild was kind of in the rearview mirror. You started to add assets to start to try and win. So what have these last 5 years been like, trying to retool on the fly rather than in that winning mindset that you've had?
Well, the year that we traded Tarasenko and O'Reilly, our goal was, and we talked about it, was I think we're a good team. We had the pedigree. People picked us to be a good team. Mm-hmm. And I said to the owner, I think these players have earned the right to go out. And if we end up with nothing for O'Reilly and Tarasenko and we don't win the cup, so be it. They've earned the right. Like, we owe that to the players. Unfortunately, things didn't go that well, but we were more than prepared to take that veteran team and let them go as far as they could. But when we weren't having success, then it turned quickly. It's okay. There's no sense keeping guys around to sneak in to the last playoff spot and when you don't have a chance to win. So that started the whatever we want to call it, mm-hmm. bringing in young players. Now, 3 of those first-round picks all played this year at 20 years old. But that started my mindset, too, is that, okay, what did I walk into in St. Louis? That's what I want who was ever going to take over for me to walk into. I didn't believe that I see myself managing here starting this year for another decade. I think everything has a shelf life, and mine was coming to an end. And what I wanted to do was to take these last 5 years, and as hard as it was, put it in a really good spot. Now, it's self-serving for me to say that it isn't a good spot, but I think it is. I think we have those picks. We have 3 more first-round picks this year. I know people wish they were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I get that too, but they're not. But like we have, in the last 4 years, the St. Louis Blues have the second most first-round picks in the NHL, and I think the 5th most picks in the top 3 rounds. So we haven't been a 60 or 55 point team, to get those top picks. So I think our fans have enjoyed coming to the rink. They get frustrated, when we don't make the playoffs, but it's not like it's a bloodletting like it was probably from 06, 07, 08, 09, just to come to the rink knowing that your team has no chance. So we were trying to serve 2 masters of staying competitive and building those picks. And we would have more picks. We ended up expediting that with Broberg and Holloway, and the message that we tried to, or not the message, the path I explained to the ownership to see if they would agree with is, let's try and get as many players as we can in a certain age bracket so they can grow together. And so when I said this year, we'd rather move players for names, not numbers, because a name is closer to playing. Mm-hmm. The funny thing is on July 1st, there'll be names and we will never want to trade them because they're ours. They can exponentially better as soon as you say their names.
Now you know how the fans work.
Yeah.
I want to say that, from a fan perspective, Doug, one of the things that I found, I guess a little frustrating in listening to Monty speak at the year-end press conference was talking about how the players reacted after, I believe it was the Los Angeles game, where Monty said he got into him pretty good. And he said that he wished he wouldn't have handled that situation the way that he did. He said it was wrong for the group, I believe is what he said. To me, it was a little sort of disheartening, and it kind of led into something that you said at your presser. I want the players that want to be punched in the mouth, that want and can't wait for that response. So it was was really a little frustrating to hear Monty say that about the team. What do you, I guess I'm kind of asking, what do you think about that? What Monty said, and, fans like me that are a little bit frustrated by that sort of mentality maybe.
Yeah, and I understand it. It was funny because when he said that game, that didn't resonate with me as the turning point. Now, I wasn't in the room, but we got a point in that game. If I remember, Bucci had a breakaway that he tried to go 5-hole, didn't go in. Now the game before, the opening night in the Chicago games were really disappointing, and he chalked the Chicago game up to bad travel. I personally don't buy that one. You got that's the punch in the face. That's the adversity. That's the one you want to come over. You want to say, "Oh, you guys, this is going to be hard. We just came back from Vancouver. The travel's hard. It's a hard league. We gotta." And again, lose that 1-3-2, play a hard game, but just to roll over and not compete, and then blame it on travel. I don't buy that one. That one doesn't sit with me. But the LA one, I wasn't sure what he said to him after. I should probably ask him how bad it went. But it just seemed like that was our team, and it was frustrating. It was a frustrating year because we didn't ever get on a sustained run where you could see the light at the end of the tunnel. There wasn't a 4 or 5 game thing. I think we were probably the longest team.
Yeah, the last team to win 3 in a row.
Yeah. And that just shows you the ups and downs. And I don't know. I don't know the message that was delivered in the room, from him.
Right.
No amount. Well, even if it was Mike Keenan built going nuts, you still just sort of park it and play the next day. I can't believe that lasted for 2 weeks. But but to answer, it's frustrating that we didn't have the resolve to overcome that. And it's what you as a manager, as a coach, you talk about I don't care what galvanized them. If they galvanize because they hate Doug Armstrong, perfect. If they galvanize because they hate Jim Montgomery, perfect. But they got to galvanize, and this group never galvanized to any one common goal, and that was the frustrating part for me.
Do you think that's just the team DNA that just didn't mesh well, or because you used the word competitiveness a lot, and so did Jim Montgomery on Saturday, and I got to thinking, it's like, is that something that players develop over time, or is it something that you have to bring in from the outside to maybe galvanize the group internally?
Yeah, I think they're all competitive. I don't, you want group competitiveness. Like what concerned me and what we have to really, really dig into as a management group with Alex and Jim is for the first 3 months of the year, our top 6 players and probably our top 4 defensemen were having subpar average years.
Yeah.
So it wasn't they were having average years. They were having subpar average years. Why is that? What do we have to do to make sure that doesn't happen again? It's not like, if they were having average years and we were there, then we're just not a very good team, But none of our best players were having average years. And then when they started to have average second halves or whatever it was, or maybe above average, we were competitive. But to me, that was a little too little too late. And, people talk about, well, it was a lot like the year before. The difference the year before, in my opinion, was, we went into Washington the year before and won a big game. Like, we didn't win the big games that we had to win when we fought our way back in. So I use the analogy like, we were playing with house money, and then all of a sudden we had to put our own money on the table and we went bankrupt.
Yeah.
And so there was just a different feeling. And the San Jose game, the LA game, were 2, and I think I talked about a little bit, was that because nobody was winning in the West, it didn't really hurt us that bad, because when we went into Colorado, and the feeling was the way Colorado was playing at home. Now I think they lost 4 in a row prior to that game, but they were a wagon at home up until those 4 that. So you look at the schedule, like, yeah, we want to beat Colorado, but we got to beat LA, we got to beat San Jose, because Colorado's at a different level. Then we went in and we beat them, and it was like, wow, now that hope springs eternal. We're going to come home, we're going to get them one more time, and then all of a sudden we're right back in this. We're back down to 3, and we've just beaten Colorado, and your mind starts going, and driving to the work, I'm all excited. Then driving home, I'm like, oh my God, what happened?
Highs and lows.
Oh, because they just made it abundantly clear that they were at a different level than us.
Yeah, just following up on what you said there, 5 or 6, 7 guys that just didn't, have their years. I'm sure you've talked about it ad nauseum internally, and I only ask it because it's going to be important next year that those guys have good years. Have you been able to put your finger on anything in terms of why such a big group could be like that?
We're going to do that in May. I think, again, my experiences are the exit meetings you have now and the feelings you have now, they are generated on negative thoughts. Like, you're angry, and A, they don't really want to have these right now, and B, I think the dust has to settle. You have to have and unfortunately we have nothing but time, so let's use it. Let's let the dust settle. Let's get our own thoughts clear, so when I talk to Jim and Alex and Al McGinnis and Scott Mellenby and Tim Taylor, Alex's inner circle, that we're doing it with not anger and not off the cuff, but we've spent time dissecting why we got there. So no, I don't know exactly why we got to that level of not being able to compete holistically for as long as we couldn't compete holistically.
I was talking about frustrations earlier, but one of the things that I know that I am not alone in as a Blues fan is an incredible amount of excitement for these young players that we had a chance to see this year. And one of the things that we've talked about on the podcast multiple times is it seemed like the continuance with all of these young guys is their character. It seems as though not only are these Blues players that are coming in really good hockey players, but it seems like the character level is very high as well. How, in the draft process, as you're looking to bring these guys in, how are you doing that character judgment? Because it seems like it's coming through. I mean, even in just Jake Neighbors, how Dalibor Dvorsky practices, Jimmy Snuggerud, it just seems like that is something theme that is common in all of these young guys is that they are super high character and the exact kind of guys that we want to take into this next, tier of St. Louis Blues hockey.
Yeah, well, that's obviously you want to try and draft character. We have Dr. McFadden does our psychological profiles, and when you look at that 10 to 20 window, we were using our draft equity to get players that could help us today. And that's what I'm saying. Like, you go back to really 3 or 4 years ago, 4 drafts ago is when we started, and it's paramount that we're drafting guys with high character, because you don't want to go through these ups and downs. You want to have that levelness to it. So I think just the vast number of picks that we have, we do prioritize character. But at the end of the day, you have to have hockey sense, and you have to have, compete, skill, hockey sense. You've hit the trifecta. And if you have the high compete and the high skill, then you're Max Celebrini. You're Connor McDavid. But I think that we and knowing Alex Steen, and everyone's going to get to know him a little bit more. Like, he is a high character person that values high character. He values team. He would be, like the Bobby Plager type. Like, he does believe in the crest. That's all he really cares about. And those are that's what I think he's going to try and build this organization around, are people that think like-minded to him. Now, there's always going to be an outlier on every team. Like, I think it was Casey Stengel said, like, it was a baseball team. I think it was 18 guys in the team. He said, like, you got 6 guys you never have to worry about, and you got 6 guys you can never trust. It's the 6 in the middle you better make sure go the right way. So we need strong leadership to pull the middle guys that way, not
the other way.
Get pulled. Then you got 12 bad guys. So then again, and no one wants to be a bad guy. No one wants to be that guy. No one thinks they are that guy.
Right.
But ultimately, you're going to have to adapt to everyone to have a really good team. And I think that's the groups I have been with that have the most success. They get the absolute best out of what somebody's good at.
We have the same thing with the podcast. One guy you can not worry about. One guy you can't trust.
I'm usually the one that gets dragged to the bad side.
I think I'm the one that can't trust in this observation.
Now we're starting to label guys, which is very important. Doug, I wanted to ask you, just because of Steen taking over, we've seen a lot of recent players that have retired taking on more front office roles. I am curious, just from your perspective, when you see a lot of these general managers now making hockey decisions, whether it's former players or agents, do you feel like that dynamic has maybe changed in terms of their mindset on hockey teams compared to maybe what it was 20 or 30 years ago?
Well, I think your leadership, the general manager role, will say it goes through cycles. So it went through ex-player cycle for a long time. Then it went through agent cycle, Pierre Lacroix, Mike Gillis. Then it went through people like Doug Armstrong and Dave Nonis and Chuck Fletcher, people that have been involved in hockey but didn't play at the highest level. Now it's going into an analytical form.
Yeah.
I think it's always going to change. I don't think that no matter who wins, it's just going to stay in one thing. There's always going to be different people. The thing that I find interesting, I remember saying this, would have been probably 20 years ago, as the other sports started to have $8-9 million contracts, $10 million contracts. I was like, well, they're not going to have to work. So how are these? We got to watch how these sports do it, because at some point, hockey is going to get there where you're independently wealthy. Like, you don't have to work. Your kids don't have to work, and likely your grandkids don't have to work when you make $100 million or whatever. So, are there going to be enough guys that want to work? And the one I think of, the most significant, one of the most significant in my life is Steve Yzerman. And I had a chance to work with him for Hockey Canada. His work ethic is second to none. And it doesn't have to be. He grinds, and he's everywhere, and he wears it on his sleeve, and he's passionate. And I just don't think, I was wondering, like, why would Steve Yzerman want to put himself through this stuff? But he loves competition. He loves the build. I see Alex Steen a lot like that. Not the same player that Yzerman was, but again, I don't think Alex is worrying, how he's going to pay the utilities bill tomorrow. But he's passionate about this. He wants to do it. And I see Jason Spezza with the Penguins now. He wants to do this. So it's, I don't know, it puts a smile on my face that there's still that passion from people that don't have to do this. We have Keith Tkachuk in our team, made a ton of money. He's out amateur scouting for us. Like, his kids are making enough where there's so much wealth in the Tkachuk clan, but they all still love to work and they're passionate about what they do. And that really, I find inspiring that people love the sport and that's who they really are. They're not about a bank account. They're about what makes them tick. And so to answer your question, so I don't know if I answered any question there, but
no, you nailed it.
I like a guy like, as I said, Steve Eisen is the gold star in that for me, of the guy that just doesn't need it, but can't get enough of it. And, the way he's building the Red Wing franchise, they didn't make the playoffs, but that's a Blues situation. Like, they're going to win. And I hope he hangs around long enough, to watch him win and really enjoy it, because he's built a something there that can stand the test of time. But there's other guys that do that too. So
I remember Marty Brodeur told me one time he was going to Europe for a tournament with you guys, and I said, you could be on a beach right now somewhere. And then he left the organization a couple months later. So I don't know if he realized that.
Way to go, JR. You reminded him.
Doug, one of the things about your job, I would just think that there would never be a true off season or a true time in which that you can get away. How, as a human being, do you balance a job that is so demanding while also having time to do whatever it is that you do? And then also a follow-up, what is it that you do when you're away from hockey? Or do you have any other sort of passions and things that you do to kind of try to take your mind off the game for a little bit?
Yeah, this is going to sound like a really sappy answer. I think because I don't look at it as a job. I love doing this. I love being part of a team. I love working with people. I get excited every day to wake up. I'm not a big sleeper. I say to the guys, if you don't put your phone on Do Not Disturb, you got to let me know now, because I'm firing texts out at 4:30 and 5 on what I'm thinking. And so that's how I feel. I don't actually think this is work. I get paid, and I get paid handsomely. Everything is great, but it's not like where I regret getting up any day. I'm excited. And I think that's why. And what I do, I spend a lot of time, my wife and I are really close. We do a lot of things together. And that's one thing that you learn, I think, in sport is your family, our family unit, my wife and 2 kids, we're us, because as I said, you make decisions based on, well, if I go to St. Louis, we got to be there 6 years. I can't do this to my daughter. You're always, and I've told these stories, when things aren't going good, I'll go home and my wife's cleaning out the house. She's like, well, this is the time. They're going to fire you. And I got to get ready to get rid of this stuff. And it's in your mind. So you become really close as a family. And I wouldn't have it any other way, but you don't have a lot of friends. And you have a lot of acquaintances, but you don't have a lot of friends. And because it's hard for people to understand what you go through. And I'm not complaining about that at all. It's just sort of the life that we've had, and I love.
Hey, and I've asked him a similar question over the years. I'm interested, what's one thing that Doug Armstrong does when he's off, right? I just want to hear him say fly fishing, or I go hunting with Tom or something like that. If you could give us just one thing, other than obviously that you and your family hang out, what's one thing that you like?
Well, one thing I don't do, I did go hunting with Tom once. And I don't, any turkey hunters on the audience. So we go to, Tom's got a place, and we go there, and I've never really shot a gun. So he teaches me how to shoot the gun. We drive up there, it's about 4 in the afternoon, and I shoot, and then we get a little cooler of beer and get on a AV, and we go up to the top, and he's turkey calling, and I'm going, I like this. I'm having a few beers, and we're talking, and beautiful night, and then at 4 a.m, knock, 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 and then we go out, and we're dark and cold. And I'm sitting in this blind, and I go like this, I rub my head, and he goes, "You can't move." He's like, turkeys, they can hear and see everything. I said, okay, when do they come out? 2 hours.
Doug stood up and said, all right, I'm out.
I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And I'm a pretty big man. I'm not the most flexible. So I'm in this blind and my knees hurting. So what I don't do is hunt.
We've learned no hunting trips for Doug anytime soon.
But Mr. Stillman is passionate about hunting. Like he'll go to Mexico, he'll go to Florida, he'll go to Texas. He goes anywhere to hunt. And I'm going, wow, that just doesn't sound like fun. Now what I do is I love to golf. I like in July and August, and there's a group of guys led by Kenny Holland who manages the LA Kings now. He sets these golf trips up, and I show Tom the itinerary. So we'll go to Europe. We'll go for 10 days and we'll play 17 rounds, all walking 2 countries. We'll go to Ireland and Scotland on a ferry, and you come back and walk 160 miles, and Tom's like, are you an idiot? I go, well, it beats sitting in a freaking blind.
I'm just picturing you trying to get a hold of Tom to tell him you want to sign Holloway and Broberg's offer sheets, and he's in a blind in Texas.
Doug, call me back in 4 hours. I got to make this decision now, Tom.
Well, the good thing is there's the window, the July 1st window for free agency. There's not a lot of hunting going on, and quite honestly, the March when turkey season starts, the trade deadline's passed.
That's
so
right.
He's been available when we need him.
That's awesome. Also, you said walk 160 miles. I would much rather do it in Europe for golf than walk 160 miles at Disney World when my wife decides that she wants to go. That's the 160 miles that you're wrapping around the whole freaking place. Well, Doug, I had 2 more questions I wanted to ask you because I know you're tight on time and we want to keep you super long. But, we talked a little bit about that 1 year short-term window and then that midterm 3-year window. Do you still view it as competing for a playoff spot in that window, or is there maybe a little conversation of looking at it a little bit differently for the 1 year so that the 3 year you can get back to that?
I think we should be competing for a playoff spot. I thought we should have this year. Now it's going to be, and again, this is my viewpoint, it's what we did when it didn't matter that has us somewhat excited, but tempered. But in October, November, where every point is contested because everyone's trying to set their footing, how is Theo going to be? How is Otto going to be? How are the guys going to be that have done it really without much, like if you lose, well, who cares? You get a higher pick. If you win, yeah, well, that's great. Like when it really matters, which is just coming out of training camp. So I think we're going to be competitive. I think we can push for a playoff spot. We're going to need good things to happen. We're going to need our 2 goaltenders to be good. We're going to need our which are now our older players, which is getting, in their late 20s. They used to be the youth movement around here.
Kid line.
Yeah. So that we need them to lead the way, to be great players. I think we can compete. I really do. Now we're going to need everyone to be at their best, and that's that hunger part that I know that Alex has. Like I get rejuvenated or invigorated just by talking to him every day. His excitement level right now and his work ethic is off the charts. And I trying to say to him, like, you got to temper that a little bit because it's a long year. And he goes, oh, I know, but
calm down a little bit. Yeah. Okay. I'll hog the mic one more time and I'll let you guys wrap up. The question that I think I've heard so much on post-game shows that we do and then podcasts that we do is, asking about the depth and looking at where the strengths and the weaknesses are. When you look at what you've accumulated over the last 4 to 5 years and all of these young assets, do you feel like there's a strength and there's a weakness in your system?
Well, I would say our depth on defense now is greater. When it was a weakness, it's become a strength now with Mayu and with Juracek. Juracek is a guy we took in the first round 2 years ago. He's doing a phenomenal job in the CHL right now, point-wise, but also play-wise. He could be a guy that could bypass the American Hockey League. Now he has to do that in training camp. And then with Theo, with Ralph, we like our depth there. I think we'd like to continue to improve our center ice depth. I think that's an area. If you build your teams, which is basically stood the test of time for 100 years, down the middle of the ice, goalies, D, centermen, I think that's still the proper way to go. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think we're going to have 12 more players this year, and And this is a story that you pick up over time, and I share that, with our group, is that I did an experiment one year. It was 2 teams were playing in the finals, so I called one of my friends at the league, and I said, just help me out do this thing. Call those guys and ask them how many prospects they have playing in the AHL finals, and then ask them how many the other team has. They both said they had 6, and they both said the other team had 2. So my point is, all these names that we have, like, I'm realistic, they're all not going to make it. But so you just have to have as many players as you can, hoping that enough make it. And that's the hard part, is when you're going through successful times and you're using first, second, and third round picks, and if it's only one a year, you end up with a first and a third, or a second and a third. The likelihood of that guy playing is less than 50% anyways, and goes way down in the second and third. So it's hard to have depth. So we're building our depth back up, and we need these guys to perform, and we need to beat those odds of not playing.
Now, the real question, was that experiment done at 4 a.m.? Probably.
No.
And along those lines, the outside perspective, I'm sure you heard it a lot. The people who evaluate the prospects, in the media, they say the Blues have a lot of quality players, but they don't have that star. I'm not asking you to name a name, but do you think some of these guys have a chance to be a star? Like, I look at Jimmy Snuggerud and say we could be looking at him that way.
Yeah. Well, what he did this year, goal scoring, it's a difficult thing. If Carbono makes it, he's going to score goals. That's his job. That's what he does. I think he's going to make it. He's got almost 60, I think, now for the year, or over that.
Crazy.
I think there's success players there. I think, though, when I look at, I think Broberg is going to be a star in his own way. He's not going to be a Hughes star or a Makar star, but he's going to be I don't want to put too much pressure on him. But Petro, when we had Petro, he controlled the game without getting 40 to 50 points. And I think that Broberg can control the game not getting 80 or 90 points. So I think there's guys there. But if you're saying Crosby, McKinnon, Celebrini, no, we don't.
Yeah. Understandably so.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, Doug, I just want to, again, thank you for being on the podcast with us today. 3 guys here that were born and raised in St. Louis. You brought a Stanley Cup to St. Louis. I have never had so much fun as I did the day of that parade. And I very, very, very much hope that I have another one of those days coming up here in the next handful of years. But again, we just greatly appreciate you coming on the podcast and talking with us.
Congratulations on a incredible career. I know there's more to it, but just from this perspective, I gave the numbers on the podcast last time, and then you said it at the press conference. Averaging a 100-point season as a general manager is just incredible to think of for how much we talk about. So congrats on that as well. A very successful career just as general manager.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks, guys.
And congrats. And I got asked in a mailbag a couple years ago, is Doug Armstrong a Hall of Famer? And I said at that point, definitely yes. And I can't imagine what that day is going to feel like when it comes, especially with your dad being in there and you being able to cherish that memory. So congratulations.
Well, I hope that comes true. I should say I hope it comes true. Yeah. If it did, it would be an unbelievable feeling, but I appreciate the kind words, and thanks for having me on.
Yep. Doug Armstrong, General Manager and President of Hockey Operations for your St. Louis Blues. Thank you very much for listening and watching the Last Minute Blues podcast. Donny Fandango, Alex Ferrario, Jeremy Rutherford. As always, thank you very much for listening and watching, and as always, let's go Blues.
The Last Minute Blues podcast on 101 ESPN
is presented by Blue Note Roofing. Roofing, siding, and gutters. Your St. Louis roofing experts. Visit BlueNoteRoofingSTL.com for free inspection.